Good evening. Australia's had its best ever opening day to an Olympic Games with 3 gold medals, 2 of them in the pool.
Hello, I'm Paul Barry. Welcome to Media Watch. And if you're expecting a review of Nine's Olympic coverage, forget it, because the network paid $305 million for the exclusive rights to Paris and the next 4 games, and we cannot show you a second of it. But don't despair, because we have another event in which the Australian media is winning gold.
Well, Aussies can now say au revoir to international layovers when heading to the City of Lights as Qantas kicks off direct flights from Perth to Paris.
Yes, accepting junkets. And what better way for Qantas to repair its damaged reputation than to offer business-class freebies to reporters going to Paris for the Games, like today weatherman Tim Davies.
Special commemorative pyjamas and a beautifully Neil Perry-designed dinner for us. This is the ultimate sleeping flight, guys, I have to tell you. 17.5 hours. I know that sounds daunting, but it was excellent. Still feels like a dream, honestly.
Yes, a dream, as flying business class would be for most Nine viewers, and for those at sunrise.
Bonjour!
Where Katie Brown was also flying high at Qantas' expense, getting a tour of the cockpit, and then donning the Navy PJs.
I'm not travelling in a suit. People you meet in the aisle. CEO Big Dog. And thank you so much for having us.
Yes, the Qantas CEO Big Dog, who had her sales pitch ready to roll.
You could be having lunch at Cottesloe Beach and then having breakfast on the Champs-Elysees. How awesome is that?
Bon appetit.
Now, a non-stop flight from Perth to Europe is hardly big news. Qantas already flies direct from Perth to Rome, and it launched its Perth to London route in 2018. But, having accepted the junket to Paris, which they all disclosed, 9, 7, Sky and 10 rewarded Qantas with some prime-time news.
They're set to become the flights of the future.
The direct flight from Perth to Paris has touched down in the city of love.
Flights will initially operate 4 times per week.
We're now at 32,000 feet, but even before this flight pushed off, it was already reaching new heights.
New heights? Really? For the journalists, perhaps. With, on our count, more than a dozen on board. And surprise, surprise, it was thumbs up from the newspapers as well. But the junket did not stop in Paris. Journalists also travelled to Toulouse, where they were
visiting one of the coolest showrooms in the world.
Yes, the Airbus HQ, where Qantas is waiting on a bunch of planes so they can crack the Sydney to London route, with Nine's Eddie Meyer asking from the factory floor,
could you do 22 hours non-stop? Qantas believes you can. I'll tell you why. That's coming up.
And reporters, who are easily blinded by dazzling lights, were advertising
the remarkable feature allowing a gradual sunrise to spread from one end of the cabin to the other.
If that's not newsworthy, I don't know what is. With Sky's business editor Ross Greenwood, also a guest of Qantas, giving the story a whopping 10 minutes. But Qantas was not the only brand exploiting the Olympics to score editorial. Nine's Trevor Long was also in Paris as a guest of Samsung to review another gaggle of gadgets. And 7's Sean White was not to be outdone.
Bending the rules in Paris. Samsung launching their latest smartphone lineup with a scene-stealing backdrop.
And with Sean White a guest of Samsung, we asked 7 but did not hear back. Meanwhile, White was also spruiking Uber with a gimmick he could not resist.
Uber is offering a new service where you can book a ride out of Paris to some of the most popular champagne houses in the region. It's called Uber Bubbles.
But the gold medal in the junket games would have to go to Nine boss Mike Sneesby, accepting an offer to be an Olympic torchbearer a month after axing 200 jobs, including 90 from the publishing division. Talk about tone deaf. And getting bailed up by 7 at his Paris hotel.
Should you have carried the torch yesterday? Is it inappropriate he's staying in a boutique hotel when you've just sacked staff?
With Nine's newspaper staff, who are out on strike, declaring,
"Don't torch journalism!"
It's a catchy phrase, and one that journalists accepting junkets might like to remember. But now to US politics, where Donald Trump and the right-wing media have stopped beating up Joe Biden and turned their attacks on Kamala Harris.
From the moment we take back the White House from crooked Joe Biden and Kamala, I call her Laughing Kamala. You ever watch her laugh? She's crazy. You know, you can tell a lot by a laugh. No, she's crazy. She's nuts.
Crazy, cackling Kamala is not a new idea. But Donald Trump was hitting it hard last week, and the Murdoch media in Australia were joining in, with Sky After Dark's commentators lining up to repeat Trump's trope and paint Harris, a former prosecutor and Attorney General, as crazy and dumb. with Chris Kenny kicking it off at 5 p.m. last Monday.
Harris has confounded audiences around the world by breaking into inexplicable laughter at uncomfortable moments.
Peter Credlin then followed up at 6 p.m. and Andrew Bolt completed the trifecta at 7 p.m.
Kamala Harris is a public image as a cackling nitwit with that laugh.
Bolt went on to call Harris an airhead who is lacking in empathy. It's ugly stuff, but it just mirrors the attacks that the Murdochs Fox News has been rolling out in America.
As time goes by, you will see the flaws, the weirdness, until you realize, holy hell, she's a basket case.
She wouldn't know real criminal justice reform if it bit her in the part that created that annoying cackle.
And it's not just Kamala's laugh, gender and skin colour under attack. There have also been claims, like this one on Fox, that she's slept her way to the top.
Kamala Harris, she's the original Hawk Tour girl. That's the way she got where she is, and the party's going downhill if it's in her hands.
Hawk Tour girl being a reference to an internet meme about oral sex, with podcaster Alec Lace repeating his slur on X last week. And back in Australia, Sky's Paul Murray was letting former Fox host Megyn Kelly voice similar disgraceful claims.
People are going to say that you're slut-shaming and all that stuff. I don't care. She slept her way to the top. That's what happened.
But that's not the only charge being levelled against her. Before choosing Harris to be his running mate, Joe Biden said he would pick a woman and would prefer a person of colour. Cue Chris Kenny on Sky to imply that is her only qualification.
The truth is, of course, Harris was a diversity pick.
And in the Australian, Janet Albrechtsen was saying it too.
Biden has done what all good DEI Democrats do, endorse a person as the next US Commander-in-Chief, in large part because she ticked the two top boxes on the identitarian checklist.
And also in the Australian, Sky's Peter Credlin was agreeing.
Kamala Harris was never on the Biden ticket because of her political achievements. Biden needed a running mate who would satisfy the climate and identity obsessives who predominate among the Democratic Party's activists.
But at least none was as nasty as former Trump advisor turned TV and radio host Sebastian Gorka, who told Britain's GB News,
"This woman, this disaster whose only qualification was having a vagina and the right skin colour."
A comment that had GB's Mark Dolan asking,
"Do you wish to take back that rather sexist remark?"
No, I don't. It's a statement of fact. She is the DEI highest.
Dolan did not stop the interview, and GB News then posted it unedited on Facebook in case anyone had missed it. Meanwhile, back in Australia, Seven's Matt Shervington was asking the obvious question.
Is the US ready for a female president?
Well, we'll have to see. It hasn't happened before, and we can expect sexist and racist attacks against her.
Or should that be more sexist and racist attacks? With Hillary Clinton writing last week,
Ms. Harris's record and character will be distorted and disparaged by a flood of disinformation and the kind of ugly prejudice we're already hearing from MAGA mouthpieces.
And as a quick guide to what's out there, take a look at the claims that fact-checkers at Time were reviewing last week. That Harris is not an American citizen and that she is not black. But will these attacks work, or will they rebound by turning women against the Republicans? Trump's former White House communications director, Alyssa Farah-Griffin, predicts it will get very ugly very quickly and warns of Trump.
If he goes too hard at her, if he leans into the worst instincts that we know he has, that could backfire.
And another former Trump press secretary, Stephanie Grisham, agrees, telling AP,
"He's not going to be able to help himself. His go-to is to attack looks and to call women dumb, and I don't expect this to be any different."
But for Trump's band of loyal friends at Sky, too much is never enough. As you can see from this special cringe Kamala compilation, in which
Sky News All-Stars Rita Panahi, Danica DiGiorgio and Megyn Kelly take a look at Kamala's cringiest moments.
And serve up an eye-watering 15 minutes of this.
The bumbling, bizarre, broken record, Kamala Harris.
Anyone who was 18 now was born in 2005.
That's Kamala Harris, the inept, radically left and wildly unpopular vice president.
She's a fool. She's not a smart person.
It makes you wonder how Lachlan Murdoch can claim, as he did in a recent interview, that News Corp's voice is of critical importance to our communities and society. And at the Australian 60th birthday party last week, attended by the great and the good, including PMs past and present, Lachlan also boasted about the importance of real journalism, saying,
"Journalists, first and foremost, report the news, accurately and without bias. We report the facts, we ask questions, we seek the truth."
And bear that claim in mind for our final story from Western Australia, where the energy giant Woodside is celebrating its 70th birthday and spending big to do so, buying wraparound ads in the West Australian and its local Perth Now free sheets to declare
Good for WA.
But also launching a 26-minute documentary produced by Sky News that went out last Sunday, along with short clips online, subtitled Real News, Honest Views, and featuring Sky's business editor, Ross Greenwood, in a new role as gas salesman, as he gushes about the company and its history.
The story of Woodside begins here in Victoria in the 1950s.
We went from this scrappy little explorer to the big company that we are today.
The one thing that hasn't changed in 7 decades is the demand for reliable, affordable energy and the Aussie grit and determination to deliver it.
Yes, good old Aussie grit and determination, with WA Premier Roger Cook and Woodside boss Meg O'Neill lauding the company's contribution to Australia over the last 7 decades.
And has been a really important part of securing Western Australia's economic future.
Tax is amazing. We've paid more than 40 billion Australia in tax just from the venture.
Reporter Ross Greenwood props up throughout the doco in several different places and several different outfits. But each time he's boosting the company and its achievements.
Today, Woodside workers take great pride in working at the Pluto LNG facility.
State-of-the-art technology.
We've got just over 1,000 people on site.
So, what could possibly be wrong with Sky News celebrating this great Australian success story? Simple, really. Woodside is developing huge new offshore gas fields and the biggest LNG processing plant in the Southern Hemisphere. And it's at the centre of a massive row, as this Greenpeace video explains.
Have you heard of Australia's next big fossil fuel fight? It's called the Burrup Hub Gas Project, and Australia's dirtiest fossil fuel company, Woodside, is behind it.
The proposed Burrup Hub expansion would include 2 new offshore gas developments, with concerns that Woodside's gas, when burned, will release 4 to 6 billion tonnes of CO2 into the atmosphere over the next 50 years, making it much harder for the world to get to net zero. And environmental scientists, like WA's Professor Peter Newman, say the project must be stopped.
We will be seen in a world setting as blowing apart the global carbon budget, let alone our own.
With Woodside's former climate advisor warning,
"When I say I can't think of a bigger climate change decision an Australian will ever make." Like, that's a sincere opinion. It's massive.
Yet Sky's so-called documentary does not even address this criticism. And the closest it gets is when Greenwood asks,
There are some people who would say,
some people, note, not him,
that we don't need gas in our energy future, that we can transition straight to renewables. What's your sense of that?
Thus teeing up the WA Premier and Woodside's boss to tell viewers what an important role the company will have in getting Australia to net zero.
We have a decision to make. Do we want to lower global emissions?
We know the world needs to respond to climate change, and we know an energy company like Woodside needs to play a role in that response.
Some gas will be needed, but developing a massive new source of carbon emissions equal to around 24 new coal-fired power stations is not going to help the world get to net zero. And companies like Woodside know it, as United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres said last month.
We must directly confront those in the fossil fuel industry who have shown relentless zeal for obstructing progress over decades. Billions of dollars have been thrown at distorting the truth, deceiving the public, and sowing doubt.
But Greenwood raises none of this. And despite being Sky's business editor, he somehow fails to mention that 58% of Woodside's shareholders recently protested against the company's climate plan, in what The Guardian calls a globally unprecedented rebuke. And the toughest question Greenwood asks is this.
You had to pick a football team in Australia. Why did Woodside pick the Fremantle Dockers? What do you get out of that?
In my view, Ross Greenwood has sullied his good reputation by presenting this puff. So, how much does Sky get paid for doing it? Woodside says the doco was produced under a commercial arrangement, with Sky's programme credits saying, thanks to our partners at Woodside Energy. Well, the company's PR boss, Michelle Grady, told Petroleum Australia,
"We have really enjoyed working with the Sky News team to bring Woodside's incredible 70-year story to life."
We asked Sky who paid for Greenwood to present the doco and who picked up the tab for all the travel, filming and editing. We also asked why the programme had no critical voices and why it failed to address concerns over Burrup Hub's massive carbon emissions. Sky did not answer any of those questions, but it admitted it was sponsored content and said it was fully disclosed in line with the ACMA's requirements. Our final question to Sky was, is this journalism or PR? I think we know the answer. That's all from us for tonight. You can read statements from Sky and Woodside on our website. Don't forget Media Bites on Facebook, YouTube and Instagram. But for now, until next week, goodbye.